Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we are going to spend a little bit of time checking in with former Vikings that are currently playing in the postseason. And what I mean by checking in, I don't want to be misleading. I mean, we're going to spend some time looking at the guys who played well. And there's a couple of them that didn't play too well. And of course, there's a couple of coaches involved in the postseason as well. This is kind of inspired by the fact that every single time a former Viking does anything good, specifically in the postseason, everyone goes into disarray. So we're going to add some fuel to that fire today by checking in with a couple of guys that really had a nice wild card weekend and are, key catalysts to the reason why their team is moving on this season. So we'll do that, and then we will do our the way that we do our previews for the weekend, some picks, some jokes, that type of thing. So this should be a pretty laid back episode as a whole. But yeah, that's the game plan. Let's hop right into it here. So let's talk about some of these guys that played this weekend. There's some obvious ones, of course. Stefon Diggs in Buffalo. You got Kevin Stefanski coaching from his couch in Cleveland. And then there's some other less notable names, guys that you may have either forgotten about or pushed out of your memory forever on purpose. Guys like, Andrew Sandeo, Sheldon Richardson, etc. But a lot of former Vikings made a splash this weekend. So where do you want to start here? Which one do you highlight first?
I think you got to start with Heinicke, your boy. I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, so I won't say a lot, but because I know he's been your guy for a while. My sort of my Klein saucer, right? Kind of a similar type of thing, but I certainly not expect that. I appreciate him in covering Washington or covering 10.5 points on that bet. And so, I mean, honestly, he was much better than Alex Smith would have been for them. It's just a completely different game, way more aggressive, way more mobile. So I do wonder if Washington had won the game, if they would have stuck with Heinicke, for the next game, if Smith was healthy. That would have been an interesting conversation because I would have said go with Heinicke. But I think that's where you got to start because that sort of, again, I was very surprised in a good way with how he played given the situation.
Well, given the situation is one thing, right? And then level 2 of this problem is that everyone thought Taylor Heinicke sucked outright, right? And I want to give you some objective evidence to suggest that everyone thought that this guy sucked. Okay, so he originally, of course, as you Vikings fans know, was signed to the Vikings practice squad out of Old Dominion in 2015. He proceeded to break his foot when he really had his one opportunity to get some spot starter reps, never got those in Minnesota, and proceeded to be thrown around the league by a number of different teams. The ones that I want to keep an eye on here are the ones that kind of dictate if anyone's going to ever pick you up again, right? So he went to New England after Minnesota. They cut him loose. Generally, that's a death sentence, right?
Yeah.
New England, just the way that they have kind of operated and the way that everyone else around the league views New England, you get cut from there, you might be dead. Well, then he goes to Houston, which of course has New England in charge at the time with Bill O'Brien and his team, gets cut there. Then he goes to Carolina, gets a bit of a chance there, more reps, cut there again. Now then he goes to the St. Louis Battlehawks, of course, not a real football team, an AAF football team, and didn't do anything in the AFL. Nothing. No opportunity. Didn't get to show his stuff. Nothing. And then he goes to Washington, and he goes to kind of the most screwed up quarterback situation that you're going to find in the NFL, in my personal opinion, between Alex Smith coming back from the crazy leg injury, Dwayne Haskins going to a strip club every other day and getting himself kicked off the team, and then himself, he kind of finds himself in a weird opportunity here where everyone's like, all right, who the hell is this guy? And again, I want to remind you, we know who this guy is because he has, was legit reason to think this guy can throw the football well. He looked really good.
He was good. He was like really good preseason quarterback. Like, yeah, I know that doesn't mean a lot usually. Like Kyle Sloter was a great preseason quarterback too, but he has been a very good, like he has shown things against, your second, third string teams.
And we saw it in training camp. What was 2 years in training camp? I mean, both of us, like he was so low on the depth chart, he went to come to talk to us, like he wanted to talk to Drew and myself. I feel like I literally have linked my fandom to this guy because I always thought it was a hilarious joke, for one, because I thought he had enough talent for it to be people are going to kind of take it a little bit too seriously. But at the same time, he wasn't good enough where it was all right, this guy's actually going to be a future starter. And then he does this in Washington. And that's why this is the most notable play here, because this is a guy where everyone had left him for dead, including myself. I was done. I had stopped making Taylor Heinicke jokes for about a year and a half. And this guy comes out of nowhere, puts up 300 yards, like you said. I mean, a couple touchdowns.
By the way, 92.8 PFF grade, which was better than Brady in that game. So
he played about as well as you possibly can given the circumstances, and not in addition to given the circumstances, about as well as you can do, like, as a quarterback. He did everything within his power.
Period. Yeah. I mean, it was fantastic. He was aggressive down the field. I mean, I think there was some of those balls were great. Like the touchdown on the corner route to one of the guys named Sims. It was perfect, right? Yeah. Perfect ball placement. And you could even see that I think they panned over the Brady on the bench and he goes, "That's unbelievable." And it seriously was. Like, yeah. Plus the diving for the pylon, Vikings fans have seen that before. So guy's a gamer, and I really wish Washington would have won just to see what they would have done at quarterback. I would imagine they would have gone.
There's real questions now, anyways, regardless of the fact that they lost. Because did you see there's the subsequent report right after the game that Alex Smith doesn't know what he's going to do with his future. Of course, Dwayne Haskins isn't on the roster, and
I mean Heinicke was. I mean, there's no way he's on under contract next year, right? They brought him in December for 2 months or a month or whatever. So,
but he could be the guy. This is the opportunity here because they're not drafting high enough to get any of the 5 best quarterbacks this year.
At the very least, he earned some good backup money. Like, because remember the Matt Flynn game? I think it was end of 2011 or 2010 or something like that. He threw a bunch of touchdowns, bunch of yards, and then he got all this backup money for Seattle or wherever.
And they never.
That's it. Yeah. Oh yeah. And then he immediately lost the job to Russell Wilson, and the rest is history. So, Taylor Heinicke is going to get that type of deal, which is great for him. Like, he just made himself millions of dollars with that game.
It's honestly, he's worth it too. Because if you, what was my thing back then was like, my kind of claim was that eventually this guy's going to be a spot starter in the NFL. That's what I saw. That was as far as I was willing to go. I wasn't ever going to say, oh, this is Kurt Warner. He's going to figure it out at 32 and turn into a great quarterback. I wasn't doing any of that. But I did believe this guy's going to be a spot starter, and I think he's established himself that I'm right now. I'm going to pat myself on the back because I'm right.
You did not think this day would come. You did not think this day would come, though.
No, I didn't. I don't think anyone thought this day would come. I'm jubilant about it. But regardless, an outstanding performance. I think you're right. This guy gets kind of like the A grade here, and everyone else is just like a low.
I think if the Washington defense shows up as many thought it would, even against the Bucs who had been on fire, but like the Washington defense didn't really
Chase Young, 0 sacks.
Yeah, I mean, there was very little pressure on Brady all day, so I was expecting more resistance there. And if there was, we're talking about a different game, potentially Washington playing, another week in the playoffs.
Does Heinicke get an opportunity to start for Washington week 1 next year? This is a split second. Like, I'm not asking for anything.
I'm going to say no. Well, here's what I think happens. I think Washington drafts a quarterback high, or they trade up or do something. And that guy probably starts, but Heinicke would be number 2.
I think that's probably right. Yeah, that'll probably be what happens here. As far as guys that are going to be starting next week, though, and kind of rolling over here into our, next top performer that previously wore the purple and gold. I think we probably have to go to Stefon Diggs, right? Mm-hmm. Given not just the season that he had, everyone's very familiar with the fact that he led the league in just about every major volume statistic. But he came into the postseason with a reputation for being a guy that makes things happen. I mean, of course, if you have the Minneapolis Miracle on your resume, you're going to be expected to make big plays. And I think it's fair to say that's, 128-1, with a win over a very good Indianapolis team that competed to the very end, is, a staple performance for this guy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. This is, and I think I've said it on a bunch of episodes throughout the season, but like, he was right. I mean, this is the move that he needed for his career to really get to that next level, or his prestige, his reputation as a wide receiver to really leap to that next level and get the recognition he deserved. And you wouldn't have thought, Buffalo, okay. And with Josh Allen, who was very inaccurate prior to this year, but Josh Allen has become much better as a passer, and you have to attribute some of that to Diggs. And Diggs is getting the targets that he deserves. And so, he's getting the All-Pro recognition. He's getting the Pro Bowl recognition. This is huge for him. And now he's on a team that has a very real chance to compete for a Super Bowl. So this is an excellent move for his career. He gambled because he was in a great situation in Minnesota. He was. I mean, he wasn't getting the targets, but The roster was good. He had a good quarterback, an accurate quarterback, but he kind of gambled, and it has certainly paid off. So good for him. And he's really fun to watch too. I mean, it's when he is getting the targets like this, he's awesome and entertaining to watch.
The thing that I miss the most, I think, and the one quality that I haven't seen in Jefferson yet, and I'm not saying he doesn't have this trait, but I'm saying I haven't consistently seen it yet, is the catch in traffic, Stefon Diggs, where he goes up and there's like three guys that collapse on him in the air, and it's just his ball. Like, it always is his ball. It's not just that he doesn't drop it, right? It's literally that he gets beat up midair and
Like
still
takes a
comes
violent
out.
hit and still catches it.
Exactly. It's the Anquan Bolden trait, right? Like that he is, that made him such a great receiver in the NFL for so long, running those slants or short routes over the middle that are going to get you killed in most circumstances. But Diggs, like Bolden, has been a guy that consistently will take a hit and still come up with the football. And he did that this past weekend, of course, but he's just so consistent, right? When you're able to be open all the time with fundamentals, it's an amazing thing because it's predictive, right? When you're a quarterback and you know that your guy's route running ability is so good that you can get off the line of scrimmage and guarantee that he's going to be open in that window, you don't need to see as much, right? You don't need to scan the field as long or look at a guy long enough where you got collapsing pressure. It gives Allen just that extra second, or that extra moment, I should say, and it's paying off big time. Because it's not just that Diggs is a volume guy now. He's getting the volume like he wanted, but he's still also doing that vertical stuff that we saw in Minnesota in kind of a limited capacity, right? He's an everything receiver now. I think it's pretty fair to say that he's a top 3 guy in the league, and he's doing it in the postseason now. This is going to be one of the weirdest trades ever, because I don't think either team is ever going to be dissatisfied with the production.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, like there's always going to be a winner and loser in every transaction. And it's going to be very hard to argue that trading Stefon Diggs was the right move when he goes to Buffalo and wins the Super Bowl, if that's ultimately what happens here.
Yeah, right.
So,
I mean, and Buffalo's on fire, man. I mean,
he was the piece. I didn't think that he would be the piece.
He certainly was. And I think all season we've kind of thought, Kansas City, there's no way. I mean, I'm not picking anybody against Kansas City, but they kind of limped into the playoffs. And meanwhile, Buffalo is just steamrolling people offensively. And, that Colts defense is arguably top 5 in the league. Didn't seem to have a huge problem moving the ball against them. So, yeah, I mean, and we should mention Xavier Rhodes on the Colts as well. Another guy that has overall, they lost the game, but I believe he was among the best in terms of coverage allowed for starting cornerbacks this year by PFF. So that's another guy who, left the Vikings, put on a different uniform, and kind of had I don't want to say a career season. I don't think he was 2016, 2017 good, but he was certainly better than the last couple of years. And which is, as a Vikings fan, watching the Vikings struggle at cornerback, at a tremendous level this year, it's kind of tough to see that.
Yeah, I've got the Pro Football Focus stuff pulled up right in front of me here. He actually was the highest graded defender yesterday, or the other day, for Indianapolis.
There you go.
With the starter amount of snaps. There's Isaiah Rodgers at a higher grade, but he had like 5 snaps, so that doesn't count. And his coverage production: 5 targets, 3 completions, 16 total yards for Xavier Rhodes' coverage against Stefon Diggs' Buffalo Bills this past weekend here. So safe to say that he also had a nice game. And you're right. He really did have a nice season as well. And I don't think that anyone wanted Xavier Rhodes back. This isn't the same situation as Stefon Diggs, right?
Everyone I think both of us were in agreement. There's no reason to keep him. And then, I think we were both. I'm going to confidently say that I was wrong about that one.
Yeah, I definitely was as well. I thought he was cooked. I mean, he's one of my favorite Vikings. Period. I thought it was over. And I don't know where the second win came from. I would have to go through a lot more Indianapolis film to get a better idea here, but it just seems like he was just a better player this year. And that, for what it's worth, I don't want to open up this, can of worms here just yet. But I do wonder if that's kind of a mark on Zimmer, and given kind of the switch from, a system in Minnesota that used to work very well, didn't work so well this year, versus a system in Indianapolis that seems a little bit more contemporary and is currently working at a pretty high level at, the current year. Just something to think about, just given the kind of the path that Rhodes took, and kind of the amazing roller coaster that he's been on, from being, a top cornerback in the entire NFL in 2017 down to the shaft, like literally the worst graded cornerback across the board in his final season in Minnesota, and back up to being, a top 15-ish type player at his position. just a year later. So something to think about. Moving forward here, let's go to Cleveland, because Cleveland has a couple of guys, not just players, but coaching staff as well. They have become the Seahawks of the East for the Vikings in terms of poaching our talent. And the kind of the main source of that talent, I suppose, is the head coach, who gets a win, a postseason win technically, because he is.
Yeah, how does that work? Is this like, does he get this? You know, in terms of Stefanski's legacy, does he get a win here? Or is he? I don't know how that works.
I don't think it goes like if you go into pro football reference, I think it would show up as Mike Prefer interim head coach 1 win. Which again, he's a former Viking.
Which sucks for Kevin in a little bit, but I think he'd much rather have the win that the Browns earned versus, I think that's more what he's worried about. But that was, I mean, I had no, that was not my expectation for how that game played out. First of all, I bet the under, so that didn't go so well. But also, like, it feels like Pittsburgh gave this away so incredibly hard in the first half of the game that it was, I mean, if the Browns didn't win that game, there's going to be an issue.
Oh yeah. I was nervous at multiple points during that game for the Browns.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you had, what was it, 28-0 lead early on, based on 4 early turnovers. Like, it was the greatest string of events you could possibly ask for as a Browns fan to begin the game. And so we're glad to see that they didn't give that away, I guess.
It's funny too, because the way that the Browns jumped out for their league, like, it was literally like handed to them, right? Like, Marquise Pouncey doesn't snap.
I mean, credit. I will say this: credit to the Browns for scoring in the red zone, right? Like, scoring touchdowns, because I mean, they got the fumble in the end zone for 1, but then when they get these turnovers. And they took advantage of them. They scored touchdowns rather than scoring field goals, which, if you look back at the game, may have been the difference, is them capitalizing and getting 6 versus settling for field goals early on during those scenarios. But yeah, I certainly didn't expect it to play out that way. And Pittsburgh, by the way, is cooked. I mean, I think they were frauds the entire way, and I think a lot of people knew it, and we were waiting for this to kind of unfold, and it finally did.
So, in terms of credit, now this is an interesting situation, because we were just talking about this, as far as Stefanski's legacy goes, he's still coaching, right? Like, he did everything from Zoom this week, which has really been the standard this entire year for a lot of teams, Cleveland included. So it's not like he was really doing anything super differently, but he just doesn't get the win in the books. So I'm asking you, I don't care about what the books say. We saw firsthand what happened, how this game played out. How much credit do you give Prefer? How much credit do you give Stefanski here? And then I have follow-up questions depending on
so
power is there.
I'm gonna give it more to Stefanski. Although now we know, I think it's understood that he didn't really do anything in terms of coaching during the game. Like, he was just sitting there at home watching it. But I would imagine he was a key component in game planning and things like that. Yep. And as far as the game management piece, I'm trying to think back. I don't think Prefer had any difficult decisions to make. I mean, especially if the game is handed to you in the first quarter, the decision really becomes take it and capitalize and offensively capitalize on your chances. So I'm not saying Prefer didn't do, a good job or anything. I just don't think it was like, the joke we say about McCarthy. He started on third base and then and then scored, like, good for you. It was one of those for Prefer. Like, I don't think he was asked to do a whole lot just because of how poorly Pittsburgh played. So I'm going to give it to Stefanski. I think he deserves more credit for this, and just in terms of the overall season, right? Like, building Cleveland up in its first season, managing the talent, managing kind of some egos on the team as well. Maybe able to manage those together, bring them together, and give Cleveland what those fans really have deserved for a long time now, finally getting that playoff win.
So that question, Prefer versus Stefanski, who deserves the credit here, really comes down to, like, preparation, execution, and in-game decision-making. I think you're right that Prefer didn't really I don't think he did anything particularly special, at least that was visible to our eyes. He may have done something on the sideline, but he's not an innovator, right? Like, he's not the one that's drawing out. He's not calling plays. He's a former special teams coach, as everyone knows, or current special teams coach, I suppose. It's not like he's doing anything crazy. He was just in charge of decision making. And you're right. I don't think there was any hard decisions there, but he definitely had his guys prepared. But I think you have to
I'm not trying to discredit Prefer, I guess. It's just like, I don't think the game.
I would give more credit to Stefanski in terms of preparation anyways. Like, I don't,
right. Yeah. I just don't think the game called for any, like, tough decisions. Like, that's just the way the game played out. I do think Prefer could have made some great decisions if it was called for, but the way the game flowed, it was just a matter of the Browns doing, some damage control towards the end, and that's it. I mean, that's all they really called for.
So, kind of given our stance, then that Stefanski's really, the fact that the Browns were prepared was really what gave them the edge in this game, or at least that's what it appeared to be. They were very prepared. They were ready to overwhelm a Pittsburgh team that was.
Well, he's certainly more prepared than Pittsburgh was.
I would agree. Yes. Okay. So we'll give the edge to Stefanski there. My question then becomes, how much do we value what Prefer did here? I know that Prefer has a history of being not a great person, right? But at the same time, he also has a history of being very good at his special teams coach. He's got a long history of doing a lot of things well, and he also won the last time he was came down to the wire, when he's
he covered.
The Cowboys.
He covered. I remember Al Michaels made a point to say that, I believe, on the broadcast. So
when the Vikings were given no shot. So this is the second time that he's kept his team competitive in an opportunity when you think that they have no shot. Now, the way that this league has moved is their offensive guys are getting hired left and right. Once in a while, you sprinkle in a defensive guy, and I don't remember a special teams guy.
John Harbaugh.
Other than John Harbaugh, Joe Judge is the closest thing to it, being a non kind of demonstrative coordinator position going to it being a head coach. My question becomes then, how much credit do we give Prefer here? Like, is it worthy of interviewing this guy for a head coaching position, knowing what we do about,
That's a good question. You wonder if this will maybe pique some interest, huh? I would imagine if
it's outside the box for sure. It's something different.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I guess it would be certainly, it's obviously not a name. I haven't seen it, his name come up in anything throughout the, I guess what the Twitter, what Rappaport and Schefter say about coaching hires and whatnot. But I'm still of the mindset that you got to be hiring an offensive head coach, and so that's what I'm going to stick with, and that's what I would do if I was hiring. But Prefer's he's built himself a resume, and he has very minimal, yes, but he does have some head coach experience in games. So clearly he's certainly not the worst you could do for somebody that's not an offensive mind.
For sure. And then in terms of guys on the field here, two guys for the Browns, just Sheldon Richardson, and then of course everyone's favorite player, Andrew Sendejo, both got in on the action against Pittsburgh this past weekend here. Sendejo actually had a pretty solid game as far as Pro Football Focus is concerned. As always, to give out this disclaimer, say what you want about Pro Football Focus, but they generally give you a pretty good idea of, whether it was really good or really bad.
It's a really good tool to identify, how effective a player was. And so I don't think Richards, you said the grades prior to recording, I think it was like 72 for Sendejo and like 53 for Richardson. So, and those guys, I don't think their roles are certainly they're not like massive in terms of the Cleveland defense, but they're key components. And it is funny that, you talk about those two guys and you talk about Case Keenum as well as a backup quarterback there. And it's like, you kind of start rooting, you got Stefanski and Prefer, you kind of I'm rooting for the Browns, man.
It's hard not to anyways.
And you talk about the COVID issues and then the fact that they're a little bit like the Vikings and that they've just been sort of cursed for so long and they've had to deal with all this negativity and lack of success. You're really rooting for them to win. Now, I don't think they're going to go to Kansas City and win, but I guess that's sort of the roundup on Vikings players. But
I was wondering, Vikings, is there anyone else that I'm missing here? I don't think.
The other would be like Latavius Murray maybe for his brief stop in Minnesota where he had a touchdown against the Bears, but.
He did.
There's probably others out there too, like Cordero Patterson. I don't know if you want to get that deep into this, but Patterson had one long return, but the Bears offense was the Bears offense. So I'm glad that you brought both those guys up because they were a part of the broadcast, the Nickelodeon broadcast, which I do want to spend a quick moment here on because Latavius Murray gets the touchdown. He gets us the slime zone. That's a big moment for him and for us as fans to get the slime zone touchdown there. So kudos to him for getting into the end zone as a former Viking. But what did you think of Nickelodeon? I know this has nothing to do with Vikings football, but I'm sure that there's some of you out there that watched this, whether it was for your kids or you were just interested like myself. What did you think about this broadcast at all? Yeah, so the best way I can explain it is what Big Cat tweeted yesterday. He said, watching this game on Nickelodeon is like watching football on acid. Now, I've never been on acid, so I don't know exactly what that experience is like, but it was just like
That's what you
Here's
think
I'll
Essen would be like.
I'll say this though, Nate Burleson's awesome. Like
Yeah, he is.
he was the perfect candidate to go on there and sort of like while simultaneously like being the color guy of the game, but also like explaining football to kids, which was the idea of
He
this
was
whole
so good at
concept.
dumbing it down.
Yeah, perfect. He was perfect at it. So, and he should be a color guy on TV anyway. I know he's stuck in the CBS booth right now, but he should be a color guy. I would enjoy that more than his CBS role. But aside from that, it was fine. I mean, I don't know how effective it was. I don't like that Mitch Trubisky won the MVP. What was a Nickelodeon valuable player or whatever, because of it. Well, that was, by the way, that was solely Big Cat getting all his Twitter followers to vote for it, and he got half the vote as the losing quarterback who got smoked, which is pretty funny.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's good. I'm entertained simply because there's so much like it's nostalgic almost with how like the shows that they mentioned, like SpongeBob and all these characters they kind of mentioned from the past, and then they kind of asked, like, they had little fun facts about the players, like what shows they like and things like that. I would imagine. I mean, it's weird that they chose Wild Card Weekend to introduce it instead of like week 2 or something like that in a regular season game.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll see more of it, but it was certainly different. Certainly different.
Okay, so the broadcast itself didn't do a whole lot for me, right? Like I don't really care about the Nickelodeon brand. I'm not in, like, the slime thing was hilarious. I was dying the first time that thing went off. But like I'm an
also,
adult.
Sean Payton got slimed.
Yeah, that also very funny. But like I'm an adult, I don't really care about Nickelodeon, right? As I'm sure most of probably every single person listening to this show. What I do like is that I think this opens up a door here, right? And I tweeted about this yesterday. I think that this opens up the door for HBO to pull a broadcast and give me anyone who has a foul mouth broadcasting a game on HBO, and just allow them to go, ape shit on it. Instantly, I think Bill Burr, because he's my favorite comedian, and of course he has, one of the slickest F-bombs in the game. And I think that would be hilarious. Put him next to Nate Burleson would work in this venture too, because he's, break down the football of it, but just like, I want to hear what these guys are actually thinking. Like, when they have the slips of the tongue every once in a while, it's the best moment.
Well, if you watched the ESPN, the Titans Ravens game, you heard the entire game. There was, the slip ups, and they instead of like playing them, there was a little bit of a lag there where they could bleep it out and just mute all noise or all audio. And it happened all the time. But instead of that, you want to hear what they actually say, which is what you're going with here. With
and HBO. I would kill if they went even a step further, right? So on top of allowing the broadcast or the commentators to just say what they feel, get a couple guys, pay a couple guys to be mic'd up. Yeah. How much would you have loved to hear what Cameron Jordan was thinking about during that game? Like, or what he wanted to say? You know what I mean? Like, or Cordero Patterson even like, everything he'd be like, oh, I just, returning shit. Like everything would be like, I don't know. I think that it opens up a whole like batch of possibilities here for what the NFL can do in terms of, differentiating your broadcasting system. Like ESPN Plus is also doing this cool thing now where they're giving you, with Mina Kimes and a couple other people, where they're giving you
their simulcast, or like a live. There was like a live betting one too, or something like that as well. Like
it's awesome.
Live, yeah.
And so
it's good stuff.
So to me, it's not about Nickelodeon, their slime and all that. It's about the possibilities moving forward, and what we might see is, honestly, as soon as next year. There's a lot of money here. Think about how much money there would be in getting a deal with HBO just to do 3 games a year.
Yeah.
Because HBO
like you have to have your
HBO
Max or whatever the hell, like whatever the subscription's called, and then from there you can get this number of games, and then that many more people would sign up for HBO, and there's a bunch of money there to be had. So I like that idea. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
but that's a really good kind of branch off of the Nickelodeon thing.
Absolutely. All right. Last thing that we want to do here today is just go through what our thoughts are heading into next week, right? So the divisional round here looks a little bit different than I guess we're used to, but it ends up being, we get a couple of games here, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday, as we have kind of come to expect. And these matchups here are fairly interesting because of the results that we got in the first round. Last week, Drew and I were talking about matchups that we wanted to see, right? Like what needs to happen in terms of, getting the best product from this week. And I think for the most part, we got that. the upsets this weekend were quality upsets in terms of viewership, right? Like we wanted to see Cleveland advance just because
Mhm.
Cleveland's a lot more fun than Pittsburgh, for example. But you also get Buffalo advancing. That gives you a premier matchup this weekend. And of course, the other teams that were kind of supposed to win to give you, more fun, that seemed to happen here. And so I think we're in for another, fun round of NFL postseason play here this weekend. We'll start here with, what I would it kind of, in my opinion, be probably the worst game, especially for, Vikings fans. I mean, unless you're the kind of person who's into, the Packers and just like following them around. But I think that's, the Los Angeles Rams and Green Bay Packers game here is really the only one on the slate that I don't have a particular interest in because I feel like I already know the result. And that's largely due to the fact that Jared Goff is playing with, four fingers on his throwing hand. The backup quarterback, who if he's on the field, it's not good in the first place, but he might not even be there. And Aaron Donald going off the field. There's a lot of problems that the Rams are going to face, and they're going up against Aaron Rodgers, the best team in the NFC.
So I actually think the Rams match up really well with Packers.
Okay.
I say that because Jalen Ramsey can contain Devontae Adams. That defense is special. I mean, they've one of the best units all season long. Now, pending Aaron Donald's health, he did leave the game, so that's one thing to monitor. And I think you always have the possibility of a really good McVay game, right?
Just calling his shots, right?
Right. So, and as far as I'm concerned, I don't really care who's playing quarterback for McVay. I think the offense runs the same way. So, it could be Walford, it could be Goff, it could be Blake Bortles. I feel like things will be relatively the same. So, I think there's the possibility of Rams, keeping this close. I think they actually will keep this close. I'll probably take the Rams points, but I think the Green Bay. I think Green Bay will sneak out and win it.
So it's Packers -7. The over/under set at 46.5. I'm also, outright, I would take the Packers. I'm very comfortable with that pick. But against the spread at -7, I'm not a big bettor, but I know you, are more interested in that type of thing. How much more comfortable do you feel with 7 points taking the Rams?
I feel especially after this latest performance. I thought, they've looked really good, like containing Russ a little bit in terms of like escapability and things like that. And so what I like about the Rams defense is, the corners have. I mean, it's not just Ramsey, but those corners have come alive. And so if it comes to a situation where the receivers are blanketed on that first second read and Rodgers tries to escape to make a play happen, that D line has been really good about keeping him there, keeping him uncomfortable. So, I like the Rams to cover in this matchup. It's just a lot about their defense versus actually the Rams offense. I think that defense can keep Packers in check.
One thing I will say about this game is that you do get one very cool opportunity if Aaron Donald plays, and that's getting to see Aaron Rodgers quarterback against arguably the top two defenders in the NFL at the moment, with Donald being in the middle there, and then of course Jalen Ramsey in the back end, and both those guys, those two guys are both flanked with plenty of talent around them, so you can really maximize their ability. You got John Johnson to cover Jalen Ramsey over the top. You feel comfortable with that. So while I will probably mute the TV when the Rams offense is on the field because I don't think that's going to go well, I do think that seeing Rodgers versus, prime of his career, Aaron Donald, assuming he's healthy, and Jalen Ramsey, of course, on the back end, reestablishing himself as arguably the top cornerback in the league. That's fun, inherently. So I'm here for that, but I'm going Packers as well. The second one here, I think this one has a little bit more potential, and that's because New Orleans and Tampa Bay, first of all, they hate each other because they're both from NFC South teams. You'll get kind of that inherent indifference that you got from Cleveland and Pittsburgh, but from the NFC side now. The other big thing being, of course, and I'm sure this will be the talking point for all national media across the week, you get 43-year-old Tom Brady against 41-year-old Drew Brees. Brees probably retiring at the end of the season. Brady seems like he's got a little bit more gas in the tank, but you get that opportunity to have the number 1 and number 2 passing yard leaders all time going up against each other in the postseason. And of course, you get the other fun little matchups that are just involved in this game. Alvin Kamara is a character. Antonio Brown's a crazy guy. You never know what's going to happen there. Mike Evans, the first receiver to 7 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons. Plenty of talent across the board. Mike Thomas will Michael Thomas will probably go on Twitter and complain after they lose. There's just a lot of narratives kind of coming together in one good fight here with two teams that really, I think Tampa Bay is the better team at this point in the season, but New Orleans enters with the advantage. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I love the dynamic of like Tampa Bay is clearly the better team right now, I think, in terms of they're lighting it up lately. But
Yep.
the Saints have beaten them twice. So, and one of those times it was like
A massacre.
I mean, it was like 38-3 or 38-10 or whatever the score was. So you get kind of that, how hard is it to beat a team 3 times in the season type of deal. I'm rolling with Tampa in this game. I think they're feeling it. I mean, the way they showed up against Washington, I thought was impressive. So I think Brady's peaking at the right time, so to speak. Peaking. I mean, you can a 43-year-old quarterback peak, but I think he's doing really well for this time of year.
I'm also rolling with Tampa Bay in this game. Drew Brees just doesn't inspire me anymore. I think he's
Nope.
I think he's more of a liability at this point in his career, and that's Father Time's undefeated, of course, but he's also playing hurt. I mean, the bar for Drew Brees is so much lower. It's way higher for Tom Brady, 2 years older, by the way, and I think that peaking at the right time matters. Right, we've seen this before, whether it's the Giants, Joe Flacco's run, etc. If you peak at the right time, like you can make things happen that really shouldn't have happened, right? Everything that's on paper kind of goes out the window. And I think you can even say that even more so with this being, a divisional matchup. And like you're saying, it's hard to beat a team 3 times. I think that was the number one thing that we were, talking about. Remember that year when Joe Webb started for the Vikings in the postseason. The Vikings that came off of kind of that very pedestrian win where Adrian Peterson just was able to get off and get to that 2,000-yard mark. I think the number one calling card for the Vikings was that you've played them twice already this year. This is we know them. We have an opportunity here. I think that Tampa Bay can has that same feeling, but they're actually a good team. It's not just one player that's trampling their way through the playoffs. Tampa Bay is probably the most complete roster in the NFL in terms of just overall level of talent, Madden ratings, if you will. I bet you they have the most players over 85 overall, something like that. So I think Tampa Bay is going to win in this game, but that -3.5 for the Saints, that's interesting from Vegas. We know where their stance is. So Packers and Bucks for both of us, and then we go to Sunday here over to the AFC side, and I think this is probably one of the more fun matchups of the weekend. That's Buffalo and Baltimore. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. A matchup of two guys who are from the same draft class. A lot more fun narratives coming to head here. Stefon Diggs, of course, Marcus Peters, always a treat when he's in front of a camera. Who do you got in this game?
I'm going to take Buffalo. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game because that Ravens run game is no joke, but I'm always going to take the passing game versus the running game. It's actually interesting how different these offenses are, where the Bills are extremely pass heavy, like to a fault almost. They don't have a run game. When they need to bleed clock at the end of the game is where they struggle. See last week, but the Ravens are doing completely opposite. Where I don't think they really trust Lamar to throw, but there are a lot of games where they don't really need him to throw because they can just run all their option types of concepts and it doesn't matter. So I'm going to take Buffalo though. I think that's going to prevail in the end, but I think it'll be a fun one.
I want to take Buffalo. I'm going to take Buffalo too, and I want to take Buffalo here. This is a legacy game, right? Anytime we're starting to see that shift now, and I think I've been saying this is going to happen for like the last 3 years, but we're now starting to see like a true shift into like a new generation of talent. If you haven't noticed, you got Baker Mayfield in the playoffs this year.
2018 draft class, yeah.
3 out of 5. The only ones being Josh Rosen and Sam Darnold that aren't here from the first round.
How about that dichotomy of you got the extreme ends of the spectrum there.
Who would you have guessed? For me, I would have said it probably would be Mayfield, Rosen, and Darnold, not Allen and Jackson in the postseason. Just 3 years later. So it's the changing of the guards. We finally getting this new wave of quarterbacks, and this is really the premier matchup of that. The premier showcase of that. You get Lamar Jackson being arguably already the best running quarterback of all time, doing things that Michael Vick wasn't even able to accomplish. Then you got Josh Allen, who has really exploded onto I don't want to say he exploded on the scene because we knew who he was and you knew what he was capable of, but he really established himself as like actually a good player. Like instead of just having the cannon for arm, it's also an accurate cannon for an arm now. So he's throwing at 40% downfield this year. He's still rushing at a high rate. He's unstoppable in terms of just being one-on-one in the open field. I mean, he's as dangerous as a matchup individually as you're going to find in the NFL, going up against, undeniably, in my opinion, the most difficult one-on-one matchup in the NFL, and Lamar Jackson in terms of in terms of trying to tackle a guy. So this is an inherently fun narrative. I'm going to go Buffalo as well, but I do think that this is one of those games that we'll look back on, and it'll kind of be a legacy game for these two quarterbacks if their career trajectory continues to elevate as it has. Lamar being a former MVP already, Josh Allen heading in the direction of potentially being a future MVP. This might be something we look back on 5-10 years from now. And that leaves us with the final game of the weekend, and also, I believe, the biggest spread of the weekend. Yeah,
yes,
that's correct.
Got to be.
Kansas City going up against Cleveland. Cleveland gets the right to play again this week, given what they did against Pittsburgh. But they, it's kind of one of those things like, be careful what you ask for, because you get Kansas City now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're going to try and win the game, but you get Super Bowl defending champs 15. Well, I guess they went 14-2 because they lost that last game, I think. I mean, I'm taking the Chiefs. I just am. I'm not believing in the Browns yet. I probably won't the rest of the playoffs, I mean, honestly. But the Chiefs I'm going to trust them. I mean, Andy Reid coming off a bye. We know the history there. He's as good as anyone. His team's put up 30+ every single time off a bye. I think that I saw some stat on Twitter where his teams have put up 31 or more off a bye 8 straight times, something like that. So I mean, you're asking at that point, then you're asking your offense, asking Baker to keep up, which is a tall task. So I'm going to take Mahomes and the Chiefs.
I'm also going to take the Chiefs, but I do want to speak to the Cleveland a little bit here. Baker Mayfield going on record saying no one believed in us. He's right. I didn't believe him last week. I picked him last week, but I didn't believe that was actually going to happen. That was more like a heart pick, right? And this week, if he says it again, he'll be even more right. Because I don't think there's anyone on the planet who truly, in their heart of hearts, believes that Cleveland's going to win this football game. On paper, this is a nightmare. This is an absolute, you can't stop Patrick Mahomes. It's a generational level offensive talent in terms of the way that they stretch the field. They can beat you on dumps, deep, intermediate, whatever. And Andy Reid, of course, being the best play caller in the NFL, arguably. This is a nightmare. And this is Stefanski's first game coaching, by the way. True game coaching. So I think all signs, 100% of the signs point to Kansas City this week. This is a mega, mega, mega upset if Kansas City blows this, especially coming off of, being the Super Bowl champions on top of everything. So I'm going to take Kansas City. I'm going to, again, hope for the best for the Browns because I would love to see them make a run. I think that, if you get Buffalo or Cleveland a Super Bowl this year, that's righting a lot of wrongs. I just don't think it's realistic, given the fact that Kansas City exists. And unfortunately, Cleveland has to be the first team to take them on. And I truly don't think they have a chance in hell. And it's just a matter of, of individual.
It's not a hot take. It's there's 3 teams that think in the league that maybe have a chance against Kansas City right now. So, I mean,
fortunately, all 3 of those teams are still in the postseason, I think. Or if you're thinking of Buffalo, Tampa Bay, and Green Bay, probably being the only 3 teams.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of.
So if we get what we want now, that would give us Green Bay and Tampa Bay next round, and then Kansas City and Buffalo.
Which is exactly what I wanted going into the playoffs. Those are the matchups I wanted for entertainment purposes. So, because you get Rodgers and Brady on one side, you get sort of, a challenger to Mahomes' sort of throne as the king of the league in the AFC with Allen there, for I guess the future of the league, right? So with Allen, and then you get an absolute shootout likely in the Super Bowl, no matter what the result is. So that's awesome. It should be, if that's the case, if we're right on these predictions, I would be very excited for the last 3 games of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I hope it plays out this way. As much as I'd love to see Cleveland win, they just aren't they're not going to be as much of a fun matchup in the Super Bowl.
Wouldn't be as fun, but we'd be super invested in that Cinderella.
Oh, for sure. Right.
That would be just as entertaining for me. Would it be that Cinderella story of beating, their longtime rival have never had any success against in the last 2 decades. Then they beat, the defending champs, undisputed best team. on the road, and then like that would be awesome to see. And then of course Stefanski and former Minnesota ties, like that would be great, but it's just not in the cards.
So I'm going to round this show out with one final question about Cleveland here. They go into this matchup as 9.5-point underdogs. I just, went on record saying I don't see any possible chance that they win unless, the same type of thing happens as last week against Pittsburgh. Like they're going to need like literally the same type of thing to have a chance here. Has Cleveland done everything it's supposed to do this year? Is my question. Like, have they accomplished have they hit their bar, surpassed their bar, and so forth? Like, when they lose this weekend, is this going to, like, there's going to be no questions about the achievements of Cleveland this year, right? Like everyone's just gonna be like, this is a great season. This is a foundation season. Let's see what they can do next year. It's not going to be like, oh man, the Browns, they shit the bed again. It's not going to.
Oh, I don't think that'll happen. I mean, unless it's really unless it's a Vikings-esque loss, like the Vikings either lose playoff games in like super like heartbreaking fashion with a missed kick or whatever, or they get freaking smoked 41-0. It's one of the two. And if it's one of those, then you'll get like oh well, this is what being a Browns fan is like, blah blah blah. But there's clearly the Browns have turned a corner. They've got great personnel on both sides of the ball. They got a great coach now. There's something cooking there, and if Baker keeps developing, they keep OBJ around. They've got some good receivers. Like there's a ton of talent there. So this isn't your same Browns, and I don't see like, for example, like a letdown, 7-9 or 6-10 season coming next year. I think they're better than that. So
31-17, if that's the final score, Cleveland wins. Or excuse me, not Cleveland wins. Kansas City wins 31-17.
Yeah.
How do you feel if you're a Browns fan?
I mean, I personally, I'm very, I accept the season. I mean, way better than you expect, right? Rookie head coach, like, come on. Yeah. You should not have won the game before because your team didn't practice all week and your coach was at home in the basement. So I wouldn't say the Browns are back. Maybe another season to solidify that. But I mean, after 2+ decades of bottom feeding, you got to be pleased with that.
Absolutely. That's how I feel as well. All right, then. Well, that's all we got for you guys here today. We will be back next week doing a lot of the same thing, to be honest with you, until things really get cooking in terms of free agency. Our next moves will be based around, the postseason situation, and then any notable news that may or may not come out in the next few weeks here. But as always, we appreciate you guys listening. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever else you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check out the Daily Norseman. You can find us and the rest of the Climbing the Pocket team on there as well. And then if you want to watch us, Drew and I are on YouTube. You can drop us a comment there. We always check that stuff out. So thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you next week.